What's up? It is Dom, and we are back with episode 2 of OnlyFans, the QuietCool Fan podcast. To my right, I have Dane Stevenson. To my left, Ricardo Chabert. And once again, we are QuietCool. We have a bunch of fun things to talk about today.
Yes, we do.
Yes. But before we jump into it, I would love just to get into what I'm going to call the hater of the week, okay? The hater of the week is specifically from TikTok, because I run the TikTok. Yes, it's me, the bald guy. It's me. I'm going to get into a comment that kind of wild. I want to see how you guys feel about this one. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Hit me.
Whole House fans are a complete scam. How the hell is this going to save me money? Real comment. I'm not going to read his name.
No name?
No.
No name.
Can't
find him.
Gotta save
Can't
him.
find him.
I'm going to save him. But, and it's funny because I kind of see this, I see like similar comments all the time. It's kind of, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it. I want you guys to.
People talk a lot. They say a lot of negative things, and it's okay. But for our viewership and people that have heard about QuietCool or seen it, I want everyone to know, like, we're a family-owned business where we employ hundreds of people. We've been doing this for 15 plus years. We're an all-American made company where we make all of our stuff in-house in a 200,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Southern California. And so, you can't have those kind of things if you're doing something fraudulent,
And not to mention, like, what is it I always misquote it. Is it the Inc. 5? What is it? Was it?
Yeah. So Inc.'s top 5,000, what they do is they recognize the top private companies across the whole United States, and they pick the top 5,000 fastest growing companies. And we've been one of them 7 straight years in a row, which is pretty much like they've told us that this is something that, not even 1% of the companies that make the list do that. And we've done it 7 years in a row.
You don't get on that list by being
We've been like the 30th fastest growing manufacturer across the country and about 3rd in California over the past 7 years. And so I think that speaks a lot of who we are and what we do.
Yeah, and I think a big point too is when within the builder code, I think we maybe talked about it a little bit last episode. We're working with a lot of the major builders in California specifically right now, and we're going in as a standard in new construction in about 70% of the homes. And so you have to think these huge entities, right? These big names, D.R. Horton, KB Homes, these big companies, would they, risk their name, their who they are over a scam? I think that speaks volumes to Whole House fans. If you see the entire state moving towards something, a movement almost, I would call it, I think that there has to be some merit in order for something like that to even begin or start.
Yeah.
I think it's bigger than that, because I think, like, the state of California, which is the California Energy Commission, in 2013 they actually passed Whole House fans as a prescriptive requirement into new home construction. And that right there just speaks very loudly of,
it's bigger than just us.
It's bigger than us.
And low income housing, right? And so this last year, there was a program called the Low Income Home Energy Assistant Program. And basically what they do is they help homeowners across the country basically get appliances that they would normally not be able to afford in their home at no cost in order, to help them save energy. And we're actually a product that's approved on a nationwide scale for that program. And so
for low income houses.
Yeah, if
federally.
it was a scam, then it's a big one.
It honestly,
it's a big one.
It honestly just, when I read that comment, I was like, this just sounds like jealousy, Billy Bob or whatever. I made up that name. That's not what his name is.
Well,
but
one thing that always makes me feel better is we take, thousands of customers every year for over the last decade, and we do homeowner surveys who actually have our product. Not people that never heard of it or, don't understand the concept, but people actually that use it on a daily basis that actually love it. And then we get a 98% customer satisfaction rate every single year. That actually lasts like 3 or 4 years, has been 99%. But I'm taking it as a whole. And it's like, if you do a gimmick of 99%, you don't want it to sound phony. And so we just take the average over the last 10 years and it's about 98%. And I think it's pretty awesome to hear that from me as a business owner, just to know that people actually love your product. That makes you feel good, because you're like, wow, I'm actually doing something that people like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And to be fully transparent, before I started here, I didn't know what a Whole House Fan was. Never in my mind was I like, it's a scam, but I was like, this is a foreign product to me. And it wasn't really until I got one in my house that I'm like, oh, I get it. It makes sense. You know, I think it's really easy for people to, I mean, calling it a scam is a stretch, but for people to be like, it's a huge stretch, but for people to just be like, you know, I don't get it. I can understand that. For someone to say I don't
let's put
understand,
it almost even more relatable, right? Whole House fans. Right now, we're QuietCool, so we think ducted advanced Whole House fans. But I think, God, at least 50 to 100 times have I ran into a person that I talk about. I grew up with this super loud square fan in my hallway. That's a Whole House fan. It's a traditional one, but they grew up on it, and usually I hear positive feedback. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is the product's been around not since the inception of QuietCool, since like the 50s. And so for something to last, 5, 6, 7 decades and evolve and continue to grow, it's because there's something there and the product needs that evolution and continuance so that it can keep
proven
doing what
it's
it does.
tested.
Exactly.
Which is funny.
It's proven through the test of time.
Because I also see like things like, yeah, it's ancient technology. And I'm like, well, I was responding to people with,
So is the wheel.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
The wheel. Great,
Right.
great. Don't change
So
the
is
wheel.
the telephone, but no, it
Actually
advanced
do
to a
change the
smartphone.
wheel. Crab walk. We just changed a little bit.
We're now into like Tesla's electric car, right? Is that
Yeah.
an old technology? No, they just took an old technology and
made it better.
advanced it and made it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing. We're just reinventing the mousetrap. You know?
I guess the biggest thing is education. Like you said, it's just there's a fundamental understanding that's missing when you usually instantly trigger towards, oh, this has to be a scam.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's that hater of the week.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, you took
You're
a
not to
big
be
L.
named.
Put an L on the screen. Big L.
Who will not be named?
I'm sorry, dude. I'm not. But speaking of which, let's jump right from that into. Okay, obviously I know the benefits, the money saving benefits. I want to go. Not only is it not a scam, let's talk about how much money it actually saves you. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
in terms of initial purchase and ROI, initial investment, and all that stuff.
So we
What was that?
lean on 50 to 90% savings. And so obviously that's a range. And so ranges in life take a lot of variables into consideration. And so I think for us to understand, is that savings realistic? Can you get 50 to 90%? I think you have to kind of start by understanding how the savings happens. And so really it comes down to what kind of an AC usage customer are you, right? There's high AC usage customers, which these people are the ones that run their AC all the time. They're the ones that are able to replace, all this AC load time with QuietCool. So it creates the potential for that 90% savings because they create a natural higher spend. Now there's the customer that kind of like more like me, more very situational. If I feel like I'm suffering, like, oh my God, it's super hot type thing, I'll run it occasionally. And so my usage doesn't tend to be the highest. I see more the 50% of savings because I'm not replacing that much AC usage like a high AC user would normally. But then there's the customer, kind of like how my mother is, which she ran into the situation where she tried to repair the AC. It ended up being like $8,000 to $10,000 and really wasn't within our finances at the time. She kind of looked over at our family and said, hey, we're going to be sweaty, for a while. and we were, see that customer, if they were to buy a QuietCool, because their AC usage is zero, there's really not any savings that you can really make there. But the reality is the comfort level is a lot more, the quality of life goes up.
It's an
really
investment in comfort as opposed to
and so 50 to 90, it really is who are you? How much time can you actually replace with QuietCool as it relates to AC usage? And if it's high, then you're going to see high savings. If it's low, then that's where you see a change. And it's because of how much energy it takes to run a QuietCool in comparison to running an HVAC
So what he's
system.
talking about, right? One of the things is that people, you got to like wrap your head around this, fact that like in California, right, it's one of the most high energy rates that you can get from your utility company, like Southern California.
It's expensive.
The time of use is just crazy. And so, typically air conditioning costs, $2 to $3 an hour to run in peak times when you actually need it. And with a whole house fan, it could be anywhere from 3 to 5 cents per hour to run. So when you're looking at it, you're saving, you're running for pennies per hour versus dollars per hour. And so it's like, think of the Tesla to a gas vehicle right now, right? We're seeing record high numbers in gas prices, right? $8, I think in LA, I think I saw recently.
It's crazy.
And you look at a Tesla, right? I own a Tesla, and I spend probably $40 to $60 a month on electricity usage for it versus spending, $400 for my truck a month in gas. And so to me, that savings right there, that's what drove me to buying a Tesla. And so it's the same thing with a QuietCool. When you look at it, when you understand the concept of pennies per hour versus dollars per hour, you realize, wow, if I can cut half of my AC usage, I'm actually saving a lot of money.
Which it doesn't sound like, when you're talking about it in terms of like pennies and dollars, like ones, it doesn't sound that crazy. But when you look at an entire month or an entire year, that's a big chunk. That's a huge difference.
So like in California, like the average homeowner does about 3,000 hours of air conditioning usage for people that actually run air conditioning. Like on average, 3,000 hours for the whole year. Now, obviously, it's going to be predominantly summer, but there's a lot of usage in the spring and fall as well, because the last 4 or 5 summers down here in, Temecula has been up to 92 degrees second week of November.
I remember sweating in November when we went to go film that turkey. Yeah, that was. Yeah, if you haven't seen the turkey video, check it out.
I think I think I brought that to your attention one time. I was like, look, it's going to be like 90 degrees till like November, and you're like, what do you mean it's freezing in November?
And this is why everybody makes all the weather. They make all the jokes about California weather being bipolar, like t-shirt in the day, sweater at night, jacket at night, and beanie at night, because here especially,
it's true.
Once you get into the fall, the swings are crazy.
So I was talking about this with someone, and one of the biggest things is when that your brain's kind of wired the way you think is like you grow up and you go to school, right? Or you go to your job, every day you kind of look at the weather and you're going, hey, what's the high of the day? How am I going to dress today? Because it's going to be hot or cold or whatever it's going to be. You naturally, your whole life, you think that way. And for a lot of people that are doing QuietCool, it's the complete opposite. You need to look at what's the low of the day.
Yeah.
What's the low of the humidity today, not the peak, but what's the low of it today?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, don't think that way because they've been wired their whole way to go, hey, I need to understand what the weather temperature is going to be because I'm going to school or work, and I need to dress appropriate.
Yeah.
And so when you get those comments like that, I think it's because of that thought process.
Yeah. We've been kind of predispositioned to think a certain way, for sure.
Sure.
I want to get into initial investment. I want to talk like really, really rough numbers, because obviously everybody's house is different, and the size of your system that you would need would be different according to square footage, according to the climate zone you live in, whether it's mountain, desert, XYZ. And so I want just some rough numbers on initial investment, and then also talk about the ROI and how long and stuff
It's
like
the return
that.
on investment.
So let me talk about the initial investment,
Yeah.
right? So a brand new HVAC system costs anywhere from 10 to 20,000 standard, right? Now, if you get a custom system, it can be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 if you have a really big home and a mansion. But an average homeowner, 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, is 10 to 20,000 for an HVAC system. A QuietCool system for a house size between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet is probably anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000. I would say max, depending on what you're getting.
And is this installed, or is this just
I'm talking about installed.
DIY?
I'm talking about installed. It's cheaper if you DIY it, but I always recommend a professional to do it because you just want to make sure it's perfect, right? Like someone can wire up and run a switch to their house, but I'd rather have an expert to know it's perfect and you're not going to do any damage.
And that it was sized properly, because
that as well. Size properly is huge because you want to make sure that you want to take advantage of those 50-90% savings. So when you look at it and you go, hey, the initial cost for a whole house fan is 1/10 to 1/20th the cost of an HVAC system, but also runs at 1/10 to 1/20th the cost of an HVAC system. And so when you put that in perspective, you go, wow, that's a really good, not alternative, but a great way to enhance your HVAC system. We talked a lot about that last podcast of how whole house fans are really the V in HVAC.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily compare apples and oranges, but really like together they make
a complete amazing system.
Yeah,
you know.
Let's talk about ROI. Jeff actually mentioned something super interesting to me about like, because I'd always thought, okay, for certain people, they're literally like, there isn't really an ROI. He goes, no, it's just longer. You know what I'm saying?
So I think a big thing to consider there is what your energy rates are. In California, they're dramatic. I think we talked about time of use a little bit earlier, where essentially your rate changes depending on the time you use your system. And I don't know if it's a strategic thing, but usually your rate is the highest in the evening when you're home,
when everybody's off work.
Exactly. And so for us, it created a really high expensive electricity environment. And so given that our fans range anywhere between, I don't know, $1,500 about $3,000 installed down in Southern California, you're looking at a return on investment of, 1.5 to 3 years, depending on what fan you went with. It's because of our energy rates being so high, that allows, that energy savings to be much greater right out of the gates.
I think a safe number is you're going to save anywhere from $50 to $150 for an average homeowner, somewhere in that range.
Are we talking per month?
In California. Per month in California.
Yeah,
because your kilowatt hour can get up to 50 cents per kilowatt hour, and in those peak times that Ricardo was referring to.
I was gonna say, because you got 4 kids.
Yes.
Nintendo's on, TV's on, like those peak hours can get pretty gnarly.
Yeah, and we are a heavy QuietCool family, obviously. And I, like I said before, was never a really high AC user to begin with. I was kind of more situational. So if I had to guess, I think I'd paint my savings around maybe 50 or 60 in the summer, if I had to guess. But yeah, I have tons of kids. But what I was gonna make a comment on before you said something was, I have a rep that's in Illinois where his kilowatt hour is it's like 11 cents, and it never changes.
Yeah.
And so for him, you're looking at maybe $25-$30 in savings, and so at that point you might be doubling the ROI to anywhere between 3 to 5 years, depending.
So this is a funny topic, right? In California, right? A lot of people love tankless water heaters, and they're great. They're super energy efficient. But how much money do they actually save you, right?
I have no idea.
I've talked to industry experts on this, and they say, it might save you, anywhere from $20 to $40 a month, and so when you look at that just on water, on water cost. And so when you compare that to a whole house fan, because a tankless is a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's something people love, and it's important that you have to use every single day. Well, so is heating and cooling and ventilation. And so when we can save, $50 to $150 a month in California, it's almost a no-brainer, because one thing that we haven't talked about is, he said an ROI is 1 to 3 years, but you can actually finance the product, and you can get your payment as low as $20 a month, or even up to, $20 to $50, depending on if you get a zone system, you add an attic fan, how you build it, right? But still, when you look at the savings, you can be in an instant ROI depending on your situation, where you're saving money every month than what your monthly payment is, where it makes it almost a no-brainer.
Which is super awesome, I think, because the financing is relatively new for us, and I know it's something that we wanted to add to make it available for everybody, because, like, to be honest, for me the cooling thing is cool, like that's awesome, but for me personally, the ventilation and having clean air in my house is a really big deal.
I don't think people realize that you get addicted to fresh air.
Yeah, I literally am. Like, I'm not going back ever.
My family is just airflow junkies. I'm like, it is 56 degrees outside, bro, guys. Let's close the window.
And I have I don't know if you guys know much about Mexican culture, but I have a Mexican wife, and it's windows.
My friend.
Yeah, windows open
outside,
all the time. This morning, I literally got in a fight with her because I turned the fan off. I wake up at 4 a.m. I turn the fan off, and because I usually close the door, turn the fan off so I can do my morning routine without waking her up. She literally does not wake up ever. She got up to tell me I needed to turn the fan back on. She's addicted.
No, it's a different sensation of cooling for sure. It's more, it allows your body to feel cooler faster just because of the virtue of airflow against the skin. Think of kind of like a hand fan at a fair, right?
Yeah.
You're moving the hot air, you're walking around, but it feels like relief. That's kind of the same ideology when you go with QuietCool. It gives that.
I like to compare it to like a beach, right?
Ocean breeze.
It's like an ocean breeze. Like you go to a Southern California beach during the summer, like in July or in August, it's hot, but you go to the beach and you sit on the sand, you start feeling the breeze. You don't even realize how hot it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what it feels
Yeah.
like in your home. Now, obviously, if you just have a breeze that's just too overwhelming for you, it's uncomfortable because it's just, you just start getting too cold. That's why we have multiple speeds. So then that way you can adjust it down so you can, make it to where it's comfortable in your home.
Dane's just saying you're going to feel great the whole time going into your ROI.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kind of rabbit trailed there a little
Mhm.
bit, but I just think there's the reason I went that direction was because I want people to understand beyond the actual financial aspect, it's a good investment, at least for me
Definitely.
personally, in terms of comfort and what I like in my home.
Here's a funny story. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I'm out in Orange County and I pull up to a Chick-fil-A and I'm in a QuietCool wrapped car. And I get out and there's probably this 3-4-year-old little girl. It's really funny. And she looks at the car, recognizes the logo,
Yeah.
and she grabs her dad and she says, Dad, look, it's that thing that goes right over my bed and goes whoosh. And I saw it and it made me smile, made me happy, made me feel good because I was like, wow, even a 3 or 4-year-old could understand that, this thing works, it makes a difference in her life.
Yeah.
And it was like telling her dad, and it was pretty funny.
So we talked about, we do a lot of this comparison, right? And we talk about how AC cools versus how the QuietCool cools. I want you guys to explain it in like, sure, give me the technical terms, but I want it in like just as layman's as possible and how that also affects, I guess more of the science behind it.
Okay.
Want
Do you want
to
to
start?
go technical or you want me to go?
You go.
Okay.
ahead.
So the way I'd probably explain the QuietCool versus an HVAC is your AC system at home is more of a controlled, almost like I wouldn't call it chemical, but like synthetic cooling. Does that make
It's like
sense?
fake cold
It
air.
feels like this very clammy, almost cold, like hyper cold environment versus when you're using a QuietCool, you're kind of prying on that side of the human being that likes a breeze, right? And so most people naturally, at least my whole life, I've seen that people, open their doors naturally, right? They'll crack a window open on one side of the house, they'll crack a window on the other, and that's because they want to bring that
Cross
cross breeze into the home, and it kind of plays into the cultural thing too. Like you said, Hispanic people, we do things outside, right? We open the window, we're breeze people, and so
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
the bigger thing. It's a natural feeling of cooling versus more of a synthetic feeling of cooling,
Mm.
and you truly do feel the difference if you were put in the two environments. Side to
I
side.
relate it to like, have you ever been to a hotel, right? You stay at a resort or a hotel that you
Yeah.
go to. I always crack the AC going, but I'll notice like I'll start feeling stuffy and I'll start feeling
I'm kind of sick almost.
almost like a sick feeling where I'm like, I
Yeah.
need to get out of there. But obviously I like the cold AC in a room. Not gonna hate on that. I'm just saying like you get that feeling in your home
It's still kind of stuffy,
where you just
know?
become stuffy because
Yeah.
it's recycled air.
That's what I was gonna say. That's what I want you guys to get into is explain to people the difference between kind of the cooling ambient versus what a QuietCool
Sure,
does.
I'll touch base on it. So air conditioning, right? It's a recycled closed loop system. So it's just going in and out of ducts and going through the register, and it's just recycling the air and pumping it out. Well, what people don't realize is that an air conditioning just cools the air around you. It's not cooling the structure of your home. So when you're in the summer, Dom, have you ever heard growing up, or you, Ricardo, where your AC starts cycling and off? And what I mean by that, you'll be running your air conditioning and you're feeling good, and then all of a sudden it clicks off and you hear it, and then all of a sudden in 5, 10, 15 minutes later, that thing kicks right back on. Okay, when that happens, that's a really bad sign. I want to tell all the homeowners out there, if that's happening, you got to realize your car's running in first gear on the freeway. And the reason why is that if you just bought a brand new 17 or 20 SEER air conditioning system, it takes 15 to 20 minutes of runtime before it hits its peak efficiency. And so if it's cycling on and off, what happens is you're just going to drive your energy bills up because that thing's running in first gear on the freeway. And so, it doesn't cool the structure like I was saying. So like on a hot day, when it's 100-degree day, what happens is you get a heat pocket up in your attic that can get to 160 degrees. And so that heat up there is what's radiating through your walls down to your living space. And so when that air conditioning kicks off, all of a sudden that thing's reheating back up the ambient air around you really quickly. And so people don't really realize that concept.
Yeah.
Now for us, right, everyone has a bath fan in their home, or they should, right? That thing does 50 CFM. Our system, our largest fan, does 7,000 CFM. So you're talking about over 100 times the difference.
Yeah, it's a larger system.
And so when you run in the evening times and you open up your window and you run your whole house fan, all of a sudden, every 3 to 4 minutes, you're getting a complete air exchange. And what I mean by a complete air exchange is you're taking all the air in your home and your attic and you're replacing it. Brand new air that's coming from outside, just in a limited amount of cooling that you're bringing in at that volume of that rate. Like we talked about, 100 times a bath fan, or, you know, over 10 times up to 10 times more air than an air conditioning system. And so by doing that, you're cooling the whole thermal mass of your home. You run that thing for an hour, right? You just got 20 air exchanges. You run it for 2, 3, 4 hours. All of a sudden you got 60, 80 air exchanges. And so what that's going to do is pull out all the heat out of your walls, your furniture, your flooring, your whole attic, all that air that was up there, the whole structure of your home, boom, is now going to be cooled down, so that when you wake up in the morning time, all of a sudden you pre-cooled your home. And so people don't realize, hey, this is something completely, you know, of a new type of science that you're not used to thinking about, is we're pre-cooling a home. So when you wake up the next morning, you shut your windows, your blinds, you go to work. Now it's going to take almost all day.
It's going to take forever.
It's going to take forever to heat
and
back
I don't
up.
think it's necessarily like a new thing. I think just in the U.S., it's a concept that we
US,
don't
definitely.
use a lot, and so to us it feels foreign.
Well, what I mean by that is, like in building science, right? For the last 30 years, they've been talking about building the home tight,
Tight,
so that way you get a really good seal on your envelope, meaning your whole house.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, then when you run your air conditioning, you can help keep it cooler and like your attic cooler, because you're not leaking having so
air
much
into
leakage.
other places. Yeah.
That's why insulation's big everywhere, is because you want to seal the home tight. But they failed to realize that you need to ventilate it right.
Also.
And so all building scientists and everyone will tell you, build your home tight, ventilate right. And so when people think of whole house fans, we're a pre-cooling application. You know, we're going to pre-cool your home the night before, where an air conditioning is going to help bring relief, you know, when you need it.
And so the way that connects to financial, can you connect that?
Yeah,
to
I was going to say
financials?
actually, and so the big thing there that's happening is, one, the AC is now having to take the existing air environment, run it through its system, and you're spending a ton of money on heating or cooling this coil and allowing the air to run through it to get it reestablished into the living space, only to have what Dane was talking about, which is the living space. Now that cold air has been established into it, it's going to start releasing some of the heat from the mass. You know, your seat, your chairs, the walls, everything starts to release a little heat, and it causes that cycle on and off, which then forces your AC to continuously have to pump that super cool air through that coil.
So it's almost like,
I think I got the best analogy.
I was gonna have one. I want to hear yours though.
That,
I think mine's
that
Dom
relates to
versus Dane.
everybody.
Let's see the analogy.
Mine's more
I
fire.
got him.
But let's go.
What's your
with mine.
analogy?
So how many times have you been in a hot summer day, right? And you go out to your car and it's hot, and you go in there and you touch your steering wheel, your glove box, everything's just so hot, and you have to go on a drive, right? What's the first thing you do? You roll down your windows, right? You start driving. All of a sudden you're getting those air exchanges to cool everything off. Then what do? You kick on your air conditioning, roll up your windows, boom. That's how you would run in tandem with an air conditioning with whole house fan. And that's what I was talking about with those air exchanges, those complete air exchanges of cooling the mass. And that's what I think everyone does. Do you not do that in the summer?
Yeah,
I do. And to get back onto the financing side of the thing, to Dane's point, when you're cooling that coil, the amount of energy that it's going to take to cool the coil in comparison to, in this case, just spinning a fan blade, because what you're doing at that point is you're opening a window and you're taking an advantage of an unlimited supply of already cold air and using the fan just to bring it in. So really all the energy that's being used is on spinning a fan blade. And so you're paying, you know, fan spinning level energy to get better cooling effects than you would be on that 3,000 to 5,000 watt coil that's going to be fighting against itself.
with all the chemicals and all the whatever.
And we're running, literally, we're running with our ECM, our electronically commutated motors. We're actually running at almost like a light bulb, an LED light bulb. That's how efficient our fan's running. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Think
Bad
about it.
light bulb
One,
now,
one
but
or
yeah.
two light bulbs on LED cost you nothing.
Yeah. And
Where an air conditioning is actually your most expensive appliance in your home to run, more than your TVs, your refrigerator, anything else in the home. Your AC costs the most to run.
And this is a genuine question. I'm completely ignorant on the subject. Do most air conditioners come with like some sort of purifier or cleaning thing, or is it just strictly like HVAC system? Are most of them just cooling and heating?
Well, it's recycled air, so they are filtering the air, but it's the same air, and they just keep recycling it and recycling it.
Versus pushing it all out and getting
And
new fresh air.
Well,
which
to
we
your
know
point, there's
outdoor air is
duct
cleaner.
cleaning services out there for HVAC systems, because one thing you can't prevent is like buildup of lint and random things
I
within
mean,
the ducts.
that's life.
And so I guess that's part of something else that you do have to take into consideration whenever you're cooling with an HVAC. Depending on how much maintenance you do on it, you're susceptible to bringing in poor indoor air quality.
Well, how often do you guys change your AC filters?
I've never. I know my filter I do once a year,
but you need to do it.
I don't think I've done my ducts since
I
like
have
once
a
or twice a
mini
year.
split that I don't use, and I don't even know where I don't even know. I don't use it because I don't understand it. But that's just me being personally ignorant. Let's get into. We kind of talked about how many air exchanges, but what I think I want to get more into the time it takes. The time it takes for me to cool my house with a whole house fan versus the time it takes for me to cool it with the AC. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like how quickly can I drop the temp? Like, do you see where I'm going with it?
I think within 15 minutes you can feel instant relief. It's just all depends on what's the outside temperature, right?
I think that's the biggest factor.
That's the biggest factor. So,
Yeah.
but it can
How hot is
balance
the
out
home?
to
How
the
cold
outside
is it
temperature
outside?
an hour. And in 1 hour, you can balance to the outside temperature.
I mean, but to your point, the relief is instantaneous because of the virtue of airflow. You'll feel at least a 5 degree swing almost instantaneous.
1 second. So like when I run air conditioning, I have a Nest thermostat. It will actually tell me, oh, to change 1 degree, it's going to take hours to do.
Yeah.
You know, which
is money.
Which is money. But I mean, you know.
And not money in the cool way. Money
time
like
to
money
do
spent.
It, takes, is a pretty long process where a whole house fan, I mean, I'm thinking you could drop a home sized properly between 2 and 3 CFM, probably 5 to 10 degrees in 30 minutes.
Versus hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That quick of a relief.
Yeah.
And so that's where if you have a 2-story home in California, it's almost unbearable sometimes to sleep upstairs, even when you have air conditioning because it's so hot because of that attic. With a QuietCool, it's almost a necessity to have.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get instant relief. And
Well,
just
I made a
upstairs.
comment to our TikTok actually the other day that you posted something, and it was a true as day comment. I was sitting in my house, and I had been running my AC for about 3 hours, and it was 72 degrees in my house currently. My AC was still running. I decided, because I'm cheap, to turn it off, and I ran my QuietCool. It was 78 degrees outside, and it felt better. It
Than
felt
the AC.
better than my 72 degree air conditioned home, and it was strictly airflow. It was the feeling of air against my skin. It creates relief. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a pretty crazy statement. You're talking 78 degrees, which normally if I was standing outside, I'm a big boy, granted. 78 degrees is sweaty, man. I'm sweating.
Sweaty.
Anybody's
Sweaty.
it's a completely different concept. It's definitely it stands alone, really.
Mm. So, would you guys say someone doesn't need AC? Is that a statement you would make?
Death Valley, maybe not, but I think even the desert gets cold. So I think, I think anywhere really you can make usage. Maybe not on the cooling and saving side.
Let me give you something in building science, right? So like our head people that make all the building laws in California and the rest of the country, they believe if you can maintain your home at 78 degrees or less, that you don't need air conditioning. That's their thought process, not mine. I still think you need air conditioning, but that's their, what they stand by. If it's 78, if you can keep your home 78 degrees or less, then you don't need air conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, I feel like if you live near a coast, like literally a beach city, you have to be in a beach city. When you go for a new home and you buy a home in a beach city, they'll actually, the laws of way you model to spec a home and put different appliances in,
Mhm.
they'll actually penalize you to put in air conditioning in a beach city. I don't know if you guys know that.
That's
Yeah.
And so
crazy.
if you go towards beach cities, most of them,
Nobody has AC.
no one has AC because of that. Like if you go to
Yeah.
San Francisco, no one has air
Well,
conditioning
is
up there
even-
unless you're a millionaire and you put some custom system in.
Yeah.
But almost every home doesn't have an air conditioning.
I lived in Oceanside for about a year. Nobody. And we're granted, we were like 2 blocks from the beach. We had a pretty cool spot, but nobody. It just open the windows and that's it.
So that's because of what I was telling you, is that their belief of anyone that doesn't have 78 degrees or less in their home, like on average, on their calculations, doesn't need it. And that to them is beach cities and the mountains. So in my experience, if you live on the beach or up in the mountains like Big Bear or Tahoe, or if you live up in the Colorado Rocky Mountains or somewhere like that, to me, you don't need air conditioning, because it's always cool. And if you put a QuietCool in, you can pretty much eliminate the use of air conditioning. Now, if you live inland or desert,
Let's talk about
climate
Menifee, Riverside,
Yes.
Hammett.
there's no way
IE.
you're living without an air conditioning.
Or especially like Central Valley, California.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
There's no way.
There's
the
no
armpit. Sorry,
way.
guys.
And
the armpit.
so those people all have air conditioning systems, and that's where a QuietCool can really cut 50 to 90% off their usage. Because look at the temperature swing. If you pulled out your phone right now and you did a weather,
It's funny. I had an argument with the guy on TikTok today. He was like, "I live in Fresno, and there's no way this would ever be useful for me
They
today."
work great in front.
And I looked it up, and the low for today was like 68.
exactly.
And I was like-
he'd be so happy. It's
And I was
crazy.
like, "Dude, yeah, you need like." He was like, "Yeah, but it's not till 9 p.m." And I was like, "Point is, the swing is is low enough
But
for you to
that's
run a whole house
But that's
fan."
what I was talking about earlier with the mindset of how we've been programmed to think, hey, what's the heat of today? What's the high of the heat today? What's the humidity level today? So you can dress appropriate for
Mhm.
your day. So that guy probably thought, hey, today's gonna be 100 degrees.
Yeah, it was something like 100.
Why would I run a whole house fan? It doesn't make any sense to me. He's not realizing, well, look at the low today, and when do you run a whole house fan?
It's
Yeah, I think
98.
I think that's the biggest trigger someone could do is, okay, it's super hot, whatever. What's my low?
Yeah.
And if that low is within that realm of reality, which to be honest, for me, it's 78 degrees or lower, then you're
68
live.
68 is perfect.
78, I said 78.
I know, but what I'm saying is the low in
Oh,
Fresno today is
Fresno?
68.
That's a
The high today is 98.
No, he's gonna love our fan and tell his mom and aunt. He's gonna be happy. But what I'm saying is, I think as a customer, if that doubt is your initial trigger, I think that's your first starting point. Is
Yeah.
going checking your weather data. Do I have lows? If they are, when are they? Check the times. Be
Yeah.
hard on us. It is what it is. But if that low hits, then you can get a whole house fan and you're gonna love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where the future's going with what we're doing, is we're trying to come out to automate the full system. So that way you don't even need to
Eventually, yeah.
think about it. So if it's too humid, won't run. If it's the perfect temperature, it will automatically know the most cost-effective way to
Even
cool
if it's
your
9
home.
o'clock at night.
Even if it's 2 in the morning.
That's
3
what I was
in
gonna
the
say.
morning.
That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing for a lot of people is if the low doesn't hit until 11, like I don't want to get up and turn, like I'm in bed. You know what I'm saying? So the automated system is gonna be
No, we understand that being the biggest hurdle. A human element of needing to open a window
It's
has been the
convenience.
biggest hurdle as it relates to automation, which in this case would allow people to take advantage of these weird times. But we're close. It's very,
I
very
don't
close.
we don't need to talk too
We
much
don't wanna
about the
get into it.
automation, but we got something coming
Yeah.
that's going to, I think, shock the world. And we can have a whole dedicated podcast on that.
And it's for 9 p.m. Fresno guy. He's gonna be happy.
he's gonna be real happy.
We're going to save his life.
Yeah.
The last thing I think we kind of touched on it. The last thing I want to explore, because it's kind of on the same subject, is not thinking of it as an AC replacement, but for the people that live in super hot areas,
Yeah.
inland, I want you to describe and unpack the ideal like tandem use of both. Like,
I think it's the V and HVAC, right?
Yeah.
and so like let's say like run me through a typical day. Like if you have both, let's say we're in Fresno.
Let's
or
say we're in
whatever.
Temecula, California, because that's where
Got
we're
it.
at, right?
Okay.
Today's high, I think, is like 98 degrees, but the low today is, I think, 66 or 68, just
Mhm.
kind of like Fresno,
Yeah.
right? So for me, when I get home, it's going to be kind of hot. So I have a decision to make. Am I going to run air conditioning or run a whole house fan? Well, I'm going to look at when it's going to cool off. And that's typically going to be about 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
So when I get home, I'm going to kick on my air for a couple hours so I'm not dying, right? Now I'm talking if I didn't run the whole house fan before. So what I'm going to do is then run my AC for 2 hours. Then as soon as it starts cooling off, getting down to 75 below, that's when I like to run it. 75 is like, my sweet spot, and then run it down to 66 or 68 until I can balance out that temperature. Well, I'm going to run my whole house fan for 2, 3, 4 hours until I get to that point. And typically I'll run it on high speed for an hour and then boom, kick it on medium or low and run that thing as long as possible. What happens is by 10 o'clock, my house is going to be 68, 66, which is crazy to think about, because the average person, that if you ran your air conditioning to try to get to that temperature, you would have spent enormous amount of money to get that and probably can't even accomplish that. And so what I do is then I run my whole house fan, get to that temperature, then I turn it off, because I get too cold. I'm one of those people. I'm like, I get too cold at 66 is like my limit. And then I wake up in the morning, right? It's still 66 in my house, my pots, my pans, my flooring, everything. And then all of a sudden I go to work and I shut my windows, my blinds. And the time I get home from work, my house is not that hot. It might be 78, 76, where it normally would have been 85 or 90. Mm-hmm. And so if I have to run my air for an hour or two, sure, I will. But then, boom, start the process all over again. And pretty much that's how I not eliminate, but cut 50 to 90% of my AC usage.
Yeah. I actually did it when I first got my whole house fan installed. I have a infrared thermometer that I bought at Home Depot. I think it was when we first got chickens on the farm, and chicks have to be at 95 for the first week of their life or whatever. And I was really OCD about making sure it's the right temperature. So I bought this thermometer. It's a fancy thermometer. And when I first got the QuietCool, I was literally walking around my house pointing that thing at all the surfaces. It's a lie, dude. It's a lie. There's no, but I was like, dude, this morning, like I said, my wife was a complete tyrant about the QuietCool. This morning, it was I think it was probably 64, 65. And part of that is because my house is nestled up against a hill, and it's a little less hot at night. But it was cold to the touch everywhere. I literally had to go put slippers on. I was
like, cold, continuous air on anything is going to make that surface cold. Just the way mass works on this planet, man.
So just for our audience to know, if you don't know Dom is a critic. Dom is
I am a hater. I'm the guy we're talking about. You know what I'm saying? I'm the hater of the week.
He's 9 p.m. Fresno guy.
And so in order...
Are you 9 p.m. Fresno guy? You better not, dude.
And so in order for him to get on TikTok and make those videos and say it with that kind of conviction, I'm telling you, you could never get a Dom if he didn't believe and just come up here and be fake and fraud, which goes back to the
he's a man
segment.
of the people.
He really is.
People.
I
wear a lot of hats, but it's all no cap.
Yeah.
Do a zoom in on that. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the OnlyFans podcast. That's all we got for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about, insert it here on the screen. All right.
Do you know what we're going to talk about next week?
I have it written down. I don't remember.
Jeez, dude. We need to put that on the whiteboard for Dom next time.
I'm just relying on Corey's special effects. Explosions and sound bites and...
That was good. That was a good podcast.
Signing off.